Hey, JP here. So I want to show you a technique that I use quite a bit for photography to get these really nice crisp white shots of animals. I use these quite a bit for stock photography. I'm part of the Meet Your Neighbors project. Check this out right here. It's a really cool project. It's meant to highlight all the diversity that we can find in our own backyard. So what highlighted this, or what drove me to do this, is I found this really cool moth, right? It's just sitting outside my door. So I grabbed it, I wanted to get some shots of it, and if you want to turn a photo like this into a photo like this, stay tuned. All right, so I collected this moth, and I want to show you how I typically shoot this. So I've got a variety of ways to do it, and you can sort of decide what is best for you, what works best for you. And yeah, let's talk about it. So the way that I shoot this is with this technique called Meet Your Neighbors. And this involves using a light table. And I have two different light tables that I can set up and show you what they are that I typically use. I really like this smaller one that's much more compact. I can fit it into my bag. So give me a second and I will set this up. All right, so let's talk real quick about what I have so far. So I made this PVC light table. It's just 1/2-inch PVC with a sort of 3-way T joint on each one, and it sits probably about a foot tall. Then I have this acrylic, which is acrylic. I think it's 244 or 2447, and I got this off of E Street Plastics. And I also put some Velcro on the corners to help sort of stabilize this, but it's a foot square, right? So 12 inches by 12 inches. And now I have a perfect little field table for small animals. Insects, this is great. One of the reasons why I really love this is that it can collapse down. I can fit it into my bag without too much difficulty. Now, one of the problems that I've come across is handling flashes. So this setup, I use 3 different flashes, which can be quite a bit. There are people that have macro rigs that have the flashes actually on the camera itself, which can be unwieldy. So one of the amendments that I made was to create these little extensions. Let me put these on. Now, this looks a little weird now, right? So it has these little extensions to this, but the purpose of this is to attach magic arms. All right, so these magic arms can go on either side, just like so. And then I can attach my flashes to these. So I can have a flash attached to the table. I can move around freely as with a camera to take pictures. All right, so let's set that up. Now, I have these 600 EX2 RT Canon speed lights, which work fantastically. You can use just about any flash. The key thing really, I think, is to get some sort of wireless trigger. So I used Yanguno wireless triggers that you just put into the bottom of the hot shoe that will trigger off your camera. That works wonderfully. I like these because they're a little bit better integrated, but you can use really whatever you want. Now, one of the things that I would strongly recommend is using a softbox. So I have these 9-inch softboxes from Impact, these quick boxes, which I've found to work very, very well. They are a lot cheaper than like your Westcotts or your Lastolites or whatever. But in my opinion, the quality of light is still very good. So I'm going to put on 2 flash boxes onto my flashes. We'll get this rig set up. Now, one of the things you'll notice is I have this little added thing that allows this to sort of look like a circle rather than a square. That's just because I like a round catch light rather than a square catch light. It's for this particular instance, for this moth, I'm not really going to have a catch light, so it's not that big of a deal, but I have these already set up in my soft boxes, so why not? So here are my two flashes up top. Now, one of the key things that I like to do is have a flash underneath. Now, in this really bright light, you might be able to get away with just having flashes on top or even no flashes and be able to Photoshop any imperfections in the acrylic. I like to sort of do most of that in camera, and the way that I can do that in camera is by having a flash underneath. And this flash underneath allows me to sort of blow out the details that might be on the acrylic, right? So there's little specks of dirt, there's scratches, and all that can come up in the photo. And in order to sort of get rid of that, I have this flash underneath, just like so. And if I can get it to stand up, and essentially what I can do then is dial it in such that it's just bright enough to blow out the details without being so bright as to have a lot of wraparound underneath the animal. All right, so this is basically my field setup right here. I can then take my camera. Now, I have wireless trigger for these flashes. I can get the wireless trigger in, dial in my settings, and then once I get those settings set up, I can then start shooting. Right? Now, typically what I do, especially with an animal like this, so if you're not familiar with this kind of moth, it's called a sphinx moth. Sphinx moths are very, very calm until they're not. So if you start poking them a lot, they'll be okay for a while and they'll cooperate, but then all of a sudden they'll be like, nope, I'm gone. All right? And in my experience, I have a lot of issues with animals like that. So I shoot a lot of frogs, for example, and they'll cooperate until they're like, nope, gone, and they'll jump away and oftentimes escape. If they escape, that happens. It's not a big deal, right? That can happen. So typically, what I like to do to sort of get my settings dialed in before any of that, before I put animals on the table or anything like that, I have I'll take like a stick or a leaf, something of similar size, maybe even similar color, and I'll start shooting that on the table. And then I can adjust the settings individually for each of these top flashes so that they don't blow out detail. I can adjust the settings on the underneath so that I can make sure that I'm sort of getting rid of scratches and bits of dirt and stuff that might be on the acrylic. And then once I'm satisfied with those settings, then I can start shooting the animal. All right, so if I want to do those settings, and typically when I am setting this up, I like to shoot at a fairly high f-stop, so maybe like f11, f13. And then I try to do my best to have the shutter speed pretty fast. So the shutter speed might be 160 or 1/60th of a second or 1/200th of a second. Any of that is plenty fast enough for these purposes. So once I get those settings dialed in, then I can start shooting. All right, and the key here is going to be patience. If the animal escapes, no big deal. All right, so I've had this moth in here, and it fortunately has calmed down a bit. And sometimes when you start manipulating it, it can actually work to be, or it can get pretty active again, and you don't want to potentially lose it. So carefully open this. The nice thing about these containers is I can flip this over, allow the moth to sort of sit still until it sort of calms down, and then I can sort of tilt this, take a quick picture, make sure that this container is outside of the frame, and then when I'm looking at my photos to see if they look good, if I need to make any adjustments, I can then put this back over top, keep it calm until then I can take whatever other photos I want. So if we put this underneath, she's sticking to the bottom right now. I'm going to try my best, and she's starting to wake up. So this is one of these instances where she's getting pretty active, all right, which is not a bad thing. So when Sphinx moths are active, they have their antennae out, they look like they're much more alert. So it might make for a better photo, but you just have to be a little bit careful. So she's calmed down, and now I can take photos of her. So I will get rid of my little leaf. I will then have my settings correct. And oftentimes I'll use autofocus on this, although you can use manual focus. Sometimes speed is the name of the game. All right, and she's cooperating beautifully. So she's just sitting there. She has her antennae back, which is not necessarily the best, but still pretty good. So now I can take shots. And I would recommend taking a variety of shots. That's one of the nice things about having these flashes fixed, is that I can then I can go over top, I can get a top shot, I can go profile, I can do all these different really creative shots relatively quickly. And having this all set up then is a way to make this work pretty easily, pretty fast and pretty efficiently, so that you can have minimal stress to the animal, you can get some pretty cool shots, and then you can release it. Now, as I said, one of the nice things about this that I really enjoy is that it's so compact. So I can tear this down, put it into my backpack, and I can move on. So I can set this up wherever. I've set this up in the jungle, I've set this up in my backyard, anywhere. So this is a really wonderful technique to be able to get these really crisp, nice white shots, which are great for highlighting what the animal is, as well as for sales. Right? So stock agencies absolutely love these sort of white shots because they can crop out everything else. They can just focus on the animal. It's great for print media, so like magazines or articles or anything like that. And my most consistent stock sales are on these white shots because they are so nice and crisp and clear. You get lots of detail on these animals. So now, as I said, one of the things that I finally want to say is I have two different tables, right? So this little table, this 12 by 12 table, is my field table. It works wonderfully, but if I have something big like a turtle or a snake or something like that, that's not ideal, right? So I have a larger table, right? So this is a 18 by 24 sheet. I have also a PVC table associated with it. This works great for larger animals like snakes, turtles, lizards, things like that. Now, the final thing that I want to mention about this is I love how it is sterile, right? So I work with amphibians a lot, and disease transmission is a big problem. And I can wipe this down with a bleach solution. I can sterilize it and move on to the next animal very, very easily. So it's a really hygienic way of getting these nice photos. Hey, so I hope you really enjoyed that. Hopefully you can get some really cool photos yourself. So the nice thing about this technique is that you can have all sorts of variety with it in terms of using flashes, using tables, using just a sheet of paper. The nice thing about this particular technique that I've developed is that it's very easy to get these crisp shots in camera with minimal necessary editing in Lightroom or Photoshop. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you want, you can stick around for a later episode where I'll actually go through the editing process of one of these shots so you can see how I go from what I get in camera, because there still might be some things that are not great. You might still see some scratches on the table, or you might see little bits of dirt on the table, how to get rid of those, how to turn this into a publication-worthy shot. If you liked this video, I hope you did, please hit the subscribe button so you can see more of this content. I'm going to be doing more of these over in a while, of sort of reviews of photography gear that I do, of the techniques that I use to get the shots that I do, just because I feel like it's going to be beneficial to everyone. I get lots of questions on how do I get these photos, and I want to help people out. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. I'll answer them, and hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you learned something. Thanks.